Welcome everyone to Mental Health Matters and our YouTube channel, where we share information and resources on all things mental health, plus give you an inside look into what is happening at Palomar Family Counseling. Left untreated, mental health issues can have dire consequences for individuals, families, and communities, and we are on a mission to change that. Palomar Family Counseling is a nonprofit organization, and one aspect of a nonprofit organization is that it is governed by a volunteer board of directors. So I am super excited to have today one of those members of our board of directors, Don Romo. Don, welcome to Mental Health Matters.
Thank you, David. I appreciate it.
Yeah, we're glad to have you as a board member, and certainly I'm glad to have you on this podcast. So maybe give us a little bio, or give us the Don Romo story.
Okay. I've lived in Escondido my entire life. And, right now, I guess I shouldn't say my entire life. I moved here when I was 6 years old. So I've been here 54 years. It's a great place. And I know Palomar Family Counseling has been doing a lot of work in Escondido for a long time. We as a family have really felt that it's our time now to be able to help other families and work with other families. We have had the opportunity, I guess it's an opportunity, to have a family member in our family that suffers from mental health issues. And I felt this was a good way for me to be able to contribute back and find ways to help not only this person, but also maybe share what I've learned along our journey with our son. It's our son, with our son as well. And just see what we can do to make Escondido a better place and to help people that are struggling with mental health issues and families struggling with mental health issues to know they're not alone, and that there are resources and there are people out here that are looking to make it a better place for them. It's when we realized our son was suffering from mental health issues, it wasn't like it wasn't like we called their friends and said, guess what, he's got cancer, which isn't great at all or anything. But most of the time people come to your side and to your aid, and they bring you meals, they do these things and all that stuff. But when you tell your friends you have a loved one suffering from mental health issues, you might as well tell them you have the plague. Because they don't really even understand how to communicate, where to go, how to turn, what to say. And that's what our goal has been, is you have choices in life, and we could have decided to say this is a blight in our life and a curse, and we're going to put it in the back corner and hope it goes away. Or we could say this is a blessing in our life, and how can we help not only ourselves grow, but help our son grow, as well as help other people that are struggling through these same challenges, and share the information we've learned. We're by no means experts on it, but we do have life experiences that we think are important, and that we may be able to help other families and other people really benefit from it and be able to take advantage of the resources. And so that's why I joined Palomar Family Counseling, was because I know they're not serving exactly what's going on with our family, but it was an on-ramp, I guess, for us to be able to get into, mental health issues and concerns, and the impact that is occurring to people at such very young ages that have lifelong changes in their life. And how do we begin to start to stop those incidences or those triggers from occurring, or what can we do to help reduce those triggers, or what can we do to help mitigate the damage from the events in their life that happened. And so that's why I'm here today. I'm desperately, I guess is not the right word, but I'm decidedly focused on finding ways to help people with mental health issues and challenges, and especially families, and how the family members can begin to deal with the things that are going on with them. And so that's my journey so far to get
I appreciate you sharing all of that information. And you first started talking about the stigma associated with having a mental health condition. And I know that's something, those of us who work in the industry, it's not a stigma to us at all. But for people in the community, it certainly is. And I think we're constantly looking for ways to overcome that stigma. And oddly enough, if there's a benefit from COVID-19, it's one of the things is I think people recognize how much there's a need for, if not early intervention, good quality mental health services, not just for children and youth, but for adults as well.
Right.
So maybe talk to us a little bit more about the reasons why you think there is a stigma associated with somebody having a mental health issue. And
well, I can tell you it's never an easy situation for any family when you first realize what's going on. And there really hasn't been a lot of I guess you'd say communication or messages or information going out to the general public saying, hey, this is way more common than you think, first of all. And I don't know the percentages, and I probably should as a board member, Dave, but I bet you 25% to 35% of all families in the United States are impacted by mental health in one fashion or another.
Yeah.
And COVID was good for a lot of different things, and I think it was good for this because it all of a sudden gave people an opportunity to speak up and say, I'm having a challenge right now. I'm struggling right now with this. Who do I talk to? Who do I turn to? And it really became, with social media, the ability for friends and families to communicate with each other. And I give the analogy a lot of times of, and people don't really understand this, is a lot of times we when our kids were growing up, we would see families and they just appeared to be perfect. And life was awesome and it was great and everything else. Well, then you go along and you get to know them and you meet them and everything else, and you realize, wow, they have a lot of challenges as well. It may not be exactly my challenges, but there's other challenges that are putting stress on the dad, the mom, the kids, whatever. And those are helping contribute to some of the mental health issues going on. But it's really kind of like an airport. And what happens is when you walk through an airport, life is like an airport. When you walk through an airport, you see people all walking around with baggage. And some people have a little backpack and other people have a carry-on bag, and some people don't have any bags at all. And when you get on the plane and everybody starts unpacking their carry-ons and everything else, you'll see somebody with a little tiny backpack, and it's like a clown thing where they just keep pulling stuff out of that backpack and it just keeps coming out. And it just keeps coming out. It's like, wow, there's a lot going on there. Then you see other people walking in with absolutely no bags. And you're thinking they got it dialed in.
They got it all together, yeah.
Well, in fact, they don't, because they're actually checking their bag. They have so much baggage, they had to check their bag in. So we don't know what everybody's journey is, but we know we all have those challenges in our lives. And it's, how do we begin to communicate? How do we begin to tell each other it's okay? We all have a challenge or an issue or a bag someplace hidden around that we're going to unpack, and we have to. And if we try to get these things done on our own, it just keeps getting bottled up and bottled up and bottled up and bottled up until it explodes in some fashion. Whatever that is, whether it's an outburst or it's whatever happens, they eventually have to vent with somebody. And normally it isn't good to vent to people that don't know how to receive your venting, because they just think you're nuts. I'm sorry.
Right.
I shouldn't say that in a mental health.
Well,
but they're just like, I got to get away from this guy because he's out of control at this point. And it's overwhelming. It's like, when you walk down the street and you say, how you doing? Nobody really wants to know how you're really doing. They just want to hear I'm doing fine.
That's it.
At a certain point, we got to open our minds up and say, how you doing? And actually stop and listen. And that's what I've stopped and learned is, let me listen and let me ask a follow-up question. And one of my favorite follow-up questions really is, well, how's that impacting your significant other? Or how's that impacting your children? Or how's that impacting how's that changing their life right now? And a lot of times we don't even think about that. We don't even have a thought in our mind at all. And it's there going on all the time, and it's impacting family members in ways we have no idea whatsoever. And we went to with NAMI, the National Association of Mental I can't
Illness.
remember
Yep.
the last.
Yep.
I can't remember the last with the eyes for, but with NAMI, we went to a thing called Family to Family. And
Oh, okay.
it's about 15 different families that have a significant other that's suffering from pretty severe mental health issues going on there.
Mm.
And my wife and I went, and the first time we went, everybody's kind of filling the water and checking everything out. And they kind of share with, tell us a little bit about yourself. And nobody's really unbundling their bag yet. By week 2, somebody starts unbundling their bag because life's happening.
Yeah. Yeah.
And all of a sudden they're in a room with 15, 50, 30 people, possibly 15 couples or groups that are all kind of struggling through the same things. So it's a safe environment where all of a sudden we can all kind of vent.
That's good. That's
and
good.
I can remember getting in the car sometimes with my wife and saying, whoa, wow, they have it bad.
Right.
We are so lucky. And then we would get in the car once in a while and be like, whoa, they must think we just have it horrible. And they're so lucky, because our life is full of that, where it's awesome today and tomorrow's a challenge. And that's okay. It's what life's all about. But how do we help support each other with that? And with that NAMI, what we learned there was, for instance, a lot of folks don't even realize, David, that when your significant other, when you're whomever that is, if it's a child, when he turns 26, mental health and health insurance become a huge challenge. Because all of a sudden he goes off the parents' insurance, or that person goes off the parents' insurance, who can go ahead and manage to that. And now you have to figure out, how am I going to support them? Do I get Medicare for them? Have I started trying to apply for Medicare soon enough? Do I get Medi-Cal? Well, if I get Medi-Cal, only a third of the doctors will even take Medi-Cal. So now I'm in a pool that is not a pleasant place to be. And what these are stressors. What we learned was it's actually a protected class. That person gets to stay on your health insurance forever.
Oh, wow. I did not know that.
All of a sudden now you realize, well, wow, that's not one of the big challenges I had. But if we didn't have the ability to go to these groups and communicate and have that interaction and all that going on, we would have never have learned that. And we would be struggling to find health insurance even now for our son.
Wow.
And it eliminated it, and we had to bridge over. And now, fortunately, we finally have gotten to Medicare. And Medicare is not free. People think Medicare is free. It is not free, but it is dramatically less expensive than having to buy individual health care for your significant other, because that's just super expensive, at least for us. And there may be people of great means that it's not a big deal, but for us, it was a challenge. Yeah. And so we're able to get through that and manage to that. But it took a long time. It took 2.5 years. Wow. Well, what's really important for mental health right now is when you're looking at these things going on, and I realize I'm rambling, but what happens now is, all of a sudden, our son went and found a job at Home Depot, which is great because he's out in the public, he's working, he's keeping his mom busy, he's super busy, everything's going on, and his life is awesome. Well, he made too much money, so he got kicked off Medicare. So then he lost his disability and everything else. And so the systems aren't really working together. There's not a cohesive package that says this person is not so severely disabled that they can't work. Right. But what they've done is they've said, if you go to work, you can't make money, therefore you can't have insurance, therefore. So they're kind of trapping people. Yep. Because financially, I don't have a choice but to say, you can't work now. Well, that's the worst thing for somebody. Worst thing, yeah. It's you need to be out in the public. You need to have something to do. You need to have goals in life. You need to have all this going on, as small as it may be. Because I guarantee you, when our son was going through elementary school and middle school, we had teachers saying, that kid's got it going on. He's got something super special. He's going to be awesome someday. And then the light switch turned, and that's okay. He had some triggering events, and life changed. but he heard that all the time. So when he wakes up now, David, he sits there and looks in the mirror, graduated from Cal State San Marcos with a 4.0 and everything else, but he sits and looks in the mirror and says, what a failure am I? I can't even
Wow.
get a job.
Wow. Wow.
And he's not the only person, but
Sure.
that's what they're creating, is that whole negative annotation to you, because now I've gone through and I thought it was going to be super successful and everything else. And I did all the things I thought I had to do to be successful. And now look at me.
Right.
I'm
Right.
not. And so that's where we need to be able to start encouraging people to have these conversations that are really important. When you know somebody that has somebody with a mental health issue, have a real conversation with them.
Well, that's great advice. Yeah.
I
I mean,
don't want to talk to him because he's gonna go berserk or something.
right.
They're not.
Yeah.
The chances of that are slim to none. And I mean, things like that happen, and you're used to it, but you just need to be able to allow people to be successful and have a certain sense of pride of what they're trying to get accomplished in their life. And we're not doing that as a society now. If you have somebody that unfortunately you have a 5150, which is when the police come and pick you up and put you in a 72-hour hold, at least a minimum of a 72-hour hold. I don't know if people have ever really seen what that's like or have watched One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest.
Yeah.
But it's not much different than that. When you go into those psych wards, it's not much different than being in a jail.
Yeah. I've seen the county facilities, and yeah.
And you are pretty much, so when you're asking people that are challenged with mental health issues, do you want to check yourself in? It's kind of like asking a person that's broken the law, do you want to check yourself into jail?
Right.
They're not. That isn't cool.
Yeah.
I have a certain amount of autonomy and everything else. And now you want me to just sit and put myself in a room and basically be with 15 other people that have their life managed on a minute-by-minute basis. And it's not going to happen. There has to be a better solution for people that are that are not, there's a term for it, but they're able to function in society 95% of the way. And there's not an avenue for them, because it's like, well, they're only 5%, or if they just took their medicine, or if it's this. Medicine's just a mask.
Yeah.
It's not making it go away. It's just masking what's happening. Those thoughts and those things are still going on in their mind, and then what's happening is all the side effects of that medication are reasons why people don't.
Tremendous. Yeah.
And so it's, how do we begin to really communicate as a society to say, this is a challenge as big as cancer? And it may not be, but I bet you it impacts as many families almost as cancer does. This is as big a challenge as that. How do we begin to say, how do we address these things and really start to make a difference? And no matter, this is a bit gruff, I guess, but when you see these mass shootings and these things where there's mass violence events, those are mental health issues going on. I mean, and I'm not saying that my son or 99.99% of the people aren't falling into that category. But I bet if we had an ability to track, or not to track, but to help a lot of those people that have participated in those events, they may not have happened.
Right.
We just didn't get in there and impact them. And you hear people say, well, what were those parents thinking? Or what? They're at their wits' end. They're like, I don't know what to do. I give up. I'm just doing the best I can to keep this child safe.
Yep.
And it's not like all of a sudden they just put their head in the sand and said, I'm out of here. That's not what happens at all. It's just, how am I going to deal with this? What do I do? Who do I turn to? Who do I talk to? That's what needs to happen. That stigma needs to leave. And it needs to be something where everybody's willing to come forward and say, we do have this challenge. We do have this struggle. How can you help us as a community and as a society and as a government? How can we get more help in regards to this? And that's why I joined Palomar Family Counseling, is because I know it's an important issue in society right now that we need to be addressing and looking for ways to solve it. I mean, you look at just veterans and first responders and everybody else going through all the traumas they're going through. They don't know who to turn to because it's creating a stigma for them. It should not be. It should be, I have these emotions that are driving me bonkers right now. I need to be able to share them with somebody so that at least I don't think I'm the only guy suffering through this. Or the only person, or the only family, because there's lots of families and it helps give you that support. What we learned going to family was all we can do is love them. The most important thing is just love that person and always give them the credence that they're looking for. Give them the respect they're looking for in their life, because it's hard. It is hard. Imagine you thought you were going to be something awesome and now you can't even get a job at Home Depot because the government doesn't want you to make more than $11,000 a year. How you can have somebody live on $11,000 a year plus $11,000 for disability, which is $22,000, and expect that all to work is impossible.
Yeah, it just can't.
I'm not saying the government has to give us more money. What I'm saying is allow them to go out and function and help them do that, and don't penalize them for being able to only work 4 hours a day. But 4 hours a day is 20 hours a week, would put you over the limit. But 4 hours a day gets you out of the house and makes you wake up. It makes you get out of bed. It gives you a purpose in life and everything else. I don't think there's many employers that'll have somebody work. I've done the math before. I think it's like an hour and a half or 2 hours max they can work per day.
Jeez.
And I don't believe there's a lot of employers like that want to deal with that. It's just too hard. And I don't blame the employers. So but how do we start to really look at a full system that takes care of people all the way through? The first time our son was picked up and put in a hospital, he got out. He was there for 17 days. So it was not he was not very stable when he got there. He was there for 17 days. He got out. They didn't give him any prescriptions. They didn't tell him where to go. They just said, okay, you're good enough. Get back out in the street. Wow. The next one was 72 hours, same deal. So there's no wraparound. They call it wraparound service. There's no wraparound service whatsoever to help people when they get out of the hospital. That's not even being taken into account. And I've talked to politicians and I've explained this to them, and it's kind of like, no, I can't hear you kind of thing. But that's what needs to be occurring, is a complete wraparound type system where all of a sudden there's a support system that helps keep them on track. And when they get off track, it's not hard to get back on. It's not a stigma. It's like all of a sudden, oh, well, I screwed up. I can't go back. It's like, no, I was out. I'm back. Let me back in. Let me get back into the system, and I'll get back going and doing the things I have to do, because, and I'm sure the police reports and everything else will show it. There's way more mental health issues probably occurring in the spring and in the fall than there are in the summer. And it's just the change of season. And that's what's going on, is the change of seasons are happening right then. And and it's like, okay, well, he had a bad bump this spring. Spring's over, he got back on track, and he made it all the way through August and another spring, and then he got to the next August and the next fall, and bang. Okay, that's okay. He's off. Let's get him circled. Let's figure out what we need to do. Get him back on track. Get these, not you got to go do this, but it's how can we help you get back on track? We know this isn't where you really want to be, and they don't. When you see homeless people on the street and that kind of stuff, suffering mental health issues, people will say that's where they want to be. That's only because they don't know where else to turn.
Right. Sure.
It's like I can only get my SSDI, and that's $1,100 a month. I can't work. I got to get my free phone. I got to do all these free things so that I can stay within the system. And this system is now forcing me to live at this level. And that's the tragedy of the whole thing. is let
Oh,
people work. Let people do things that help them be successful and don't penalize them for it. When they get to a point where they can actually make a life's wage to take care of themselves, then take it off their Social Security and their Medicare and everything else. But don't put that burden on them, because they'll work, the spring will come, they'll lose their job, and now they won't have any services, especially when they need the services.
right.
That's the problem going on right now with this whole system. And that's why I just feel so strongly about how do we get this message out to the public so that they can understand what really could happen. And we see the county and everybody making these hospitals and these beds and everything else and doing all these clinics and centers. If they don't figure out wraparound, all we're doing is just getting more people in for 72-hour holds, but we're
Right.
really not solving the problem. We're barely putting a Band-Aid on it, because in 72 hours, you're barely getting somebody stabilized.
Wow. Yeah. What do you think?
And that's the challenge that we're facing. So anyways.
No, I mean, it's such a good conversation, and it points to so many, or it leads to so many other conversations, and important discussions to be having. And I'm wondering what you think a community-based organization or other community-based nonprofits what conversations should they be having, or should we be having, to not just address the immediate, but to also look at the system around us and
right. It really comes down to right now, in my job, in my career, I work with nonprofits, and nonprofits have had a struggle for a long time. And
yeah,
and in particular, the reason a lot of nonprofits have had struggles is because and membership based, I work with churches. Okay. I work with churches, I build churches. That's what I do. That's my passion as well. And what they've faced, and you'll see this a lot of times, is you'll go through Escondido, you can drive by a church and you'll see that church building, and it's kind of run down and it's kind of ratty, and it just keeps getting smaller and rattier and smaller and rattier and smaller and rattier. And what happens is that the group just keeps getting smaller and smaller and smaller, and they keep doing church the exact same way. Well, they're no longer attractional. They're no longer attracting younger people. They're no longer having deep conversations. They're just having conversations with themselves. And as they get smaller, it's because people are passing away. And that's what's going on. They haven't shifted their way of thinking. Right now, what's happening in the county government and every place else, in the hospitals and all that, because the federal government's forcing the money there for them, is into beds. And it's not just the beds. It's how do we begin to have a conversation of what does a full service look like for these people? And, Palomar Family Counseling has it with their classes that they have for some of the people they're serving and everything else. And they have a graduation and a whole step process of peer review basically going on with it. That's what needs to be happening in this particular segment of mental health as well, is how do you begin to have those classes? And it doesn't have to be compelled on people. It just has to be not stupid.
Yeah.
They don't want to just sit in there and listen to you talk and ramble on blah, 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 blah. It has to be pertinent information or something that compels them and wants them to come. And we need to change the way we're doing things. And at the time, 15 years ago, when I started working with churches back then, we needed a paradigm shift. And the shift was, we need to stop making churches think that they're going to have members and the members are going to tithe or give enough money to keep this church open forever. We need to figure out ways, and if you're a biblical scholar or you've read the Bible, you know that we need to make tent makers. We need tent makers, and we need to have people to be able to support themselves and figure out ways to take care of themselves. And that's what we did with churches, is we said, okay, well, we need to start back with preschools. We need to start back with these different programs that are going to attract younger families and everything else and bring them in. Plus, they'll become sustainable on their own. And what I mean by that is the preschool will help the church then get positive cash flow and everything else. And how do we get professional organizations to partner in the whole thing? That's what needs to happen here. I don't know what that paradigm shift looks like, but it needs to be a shift of thinking. It needs to be when somebody goes to a mental hospital or a mental place, it's like they're going to a country club, and not a country club nice, but there's benches and park seats, and it's I'm at a home that is someplace I want to be. It is not jail.
Right.
It needs to change the way. It wouldn't be any more expensive. It really wouldn't. It's just changing the way all these doctors are thinking. And what they're thinking is, if I have this room and it's this size by this size, I can get 2 people in there. I'm going to bang this thing out and figure out how I can get the maximum amount of people in there. And that's how I'm going to do it. Well, that's okay. Why don't we just add a little bit more cash to that problem and figure out how are we going to make a nice environment for somebody to actually live in and be in and stay in and want to be there and want to come back to. That's where it becomes just so the shift has to occur. It can't be doing the same exact thing. It can't be saying you're going to be in a 72-hour hold and we're going to let you out and good luck. If you can find a shrink, if you can find a counselor or a psychologist, great. If you can find a psychiatrist, that's even better. But finding a psychiatrist and getting one to take Medi-Cal is almost impossible. It just is. They won't take it because the fees are so low and everything else, and they just don't want to take it. Finding a psychologist to actually want and sit and listen and take Medi-Cal and not have to wait 120 days for your first appointment is almost impossible.
Wow.
And so all of a sudden you basically have just let this person loose again to go fend for themselves, and they're really not capable of fending for themselves even at all. Some are, but the majority of them that are coming out of those kinds of holds are not really ready to take care of themselves at all. They're still in a fragile state. That has to switch. If that doesn't change, we're still going to see the same cycle and the same things are going to be going on. And I will call the mental health institutes will keep be making just oodles of money, but nothing's being solved.
What do you think can be from let's just say from like a community perspective, not even a community, an individual and citizen perspective, what action can an individual citizen take? Because this type of thing that you're describing impacts us all, whether we realize it or not.
Right.
So what can somebody listening to this conversation?
If somebody called me, my question would be, how can I help?
Mm-hmm.
What can we do to help? The chances are it's going to be pretty slim, if anything. It's not a lot. It's just listen. People don't need advice when they're calling and they're talking to you about that kind of stuff. They'll take advice, but sometimes they just want to vent, like I'm venting right now. Just take a step back and listen and say, how can I help? And if it's something within your means to be able to help, then try to help. If it's not, then do the best you can. See what you can steer them. We all have an ability to help in one way or the other. You have a relationship, you have a contact, you have somebody that you know that can then interact with it. If nothing else, tell them to call Palomar Family Counseling. Tell them to ask for me.
Yeah,
I'll talk to them.
That's awesome.
I mean, it's that simple. Just start the conversation and get going with it. Because right now, I mean, you look at people talk about PERT and all this other stuff, and PERT and Escondido only works Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. They don't work Saturday, Sunday, Monday.
Well,
so if you have an incident on Saturday, tough luck, man. Good luck. If you have an incident on Sunday, you're just getting the regular police officer. And I'm not saying they're not trained well and they don't know all that stuff, but you're not getting PERT, and that's not going to happen. And so that's kind of a feel-good thing. And we need more PERT. We need more people trained. My son-in-law is in Mississippi, in Gulfport, Mississippi. They didn't have a PERT program. He's a fireman out there. He got assigned to the PERT program. They're setting up a PERT program that's working really well.
Wow.
But they understand understands just watching kind of what's going on, and he's, you know, and it's those kinds of things where it's just kind of just try to ask, how can I help? And then we need more funding for people actually interacting with people with mental health challenges right away that day. We need more PERT officers. We need more psychologists. And you know that. I mean, just when we end our board meetings, we're talking, looking for staffing and everything else.
Yeah.
Those wages have to go up. I mean, you just can't keep people at those wages because you can't afford to be a professional in that industry, in this industry, if you can't make a living, and you do have to feed your family or feed yourself, or there has to be a financial stability in people taking these kinds of careers, and it's just not as stable as people want to think.
Yeah.
And the pay is not as high. And that's where the money needs to be going to. It doesn't need to be going to more and more programs, these huge programs that are just bureaucratically bloated. And they are. I mean, they're just bureaucratically bloated up to the very tops, where there's just so many people taking their little piece of that pie.
Right.
Get it to the professionals so that they can interact with families. And we need to get it back down. It's almost like a school where, you know, the bureaucrats at a certain point have to be fewer than teachers. And I'm not sure that we're there. I bet you if we did a whole head count of bureaucrats versus across the United States, I bet you it'd be probably 50-50, or pretty darn close to it, of people channeling money and doing this kind of stuff, and people actually impacting and interacting with human beings. That's the most important thing, is more interaction with human beings and less interaction with, you know, I guess, human beings with challenges and interactions with each other at the top.
Yeah,
You know, there's a lot of feel good going on amongst those people, but it's when you go into a family to family meeting and you see the people leading that meeting and they're complete volunteers doing it for free, that's a pretty powerful moment right there. And that's when you realize that's what needs to be going on, is how do we support more programs like that, and how do we support more people so that they don't feel like they have to be doing this for free. It would be great to have professional leaders saying, this is what's happening, this is where it's going on, this is how we lead these classes and these different programs. And we're not at the feet. We're building big buildings so that we can warehouse people, and that's not really what we need. So anyways.
Well, you're bringing this to a nice logical conclusion, because one of the really great things about nonprofits is that they exist because we know the government sector, and maybe even in some situations the for-profit sector can't do it alone or can't do it well. So we need organizations like ours that are close to the community. So not even the big behemoth nonprofits, you know, the Red Crosses, and they're all great and they do good work, but those that are close to the pulse of the community, close to the people. And that's what you said a little earlier. Everybody has the capacity to help. And that's kind of the essence of the we call it the voluntary sector, the nonprofit sector, is just get in there and help.
You know, and I'll tell you that, like in Escondido, there's a place called the Clubhouse.
Yeah.
And I think Veronica, I don't know if Veronica's still at the Clubhouse or not, but Veronica is a person that and she's told me, so I'm going to repeat it, but I don't know if I'm supposed to, but she has somebody in her family that suffers from mental health issues as well. And that's what inspired her.
Mm-hmm.
And she's able to go and figure out ways to work her way and get her clients through that system in a very fast-paced method. But it's a volunteer. She started out as a volunteer who said, this is my passion, this is where I'm going. She is the director, I believe, still at the Clubhouse right now even.
Oh, fabulous.
She started out just as an administrative assistant. And she just kind of said, this is where I want to go. And I think if we give those opportunities and those chances for people to get engaged, their passion will come out. But a lot of times they don't have the ability to do that because they got to get paid. I got to eat.
Yes.
And how we get more money driven towards the clients and the people serving those clients on the ground is really probably the most critical thing right now of impacting mental health in so many different avenues. Because, I don't know how many people we serve, but imagine if we could serve 30 more.
Right.
Think of the generational changes that could occur by just serving 30 more people. How much more does that take? And that's what I look at when I see what we're doing at Palmer Family Counseling. We're making generational changes because we're changing the dynamics of families right now. We're changing what's going on. All of a sudden, a child that could have been in a cycle of abuse, it stopped. There's no longer a trigger there. That person's not being abused. They get a great education. They get married. They have kids. Wow.
Yeah.
He got a job or she got a job doing something else, and all of a sudden that cycle's broken and the next generation doesn't even know what happened.
Right.
That's where generational changes can happen. I don't expect any of this to happen today, tomorrow, but we need to start thinking about it.
Yes.
I mean, we're talking about not having cars by 2035. Can't we talk about not having some of these other issues by 2035?
Yeah.
I mean, they're planning for that, so why can't we plan for these other things?
Right.
And that's where we need to be looking, as the long-term picture, not just I'm fulfilling today's issue, which is I need more beds. That's not the solution. It's the solution's big vision. Think big. Let's go big. Let's solve the problem. And it won't ever be solved, but let's make the problem manageable.
Yeah. And let's at least have the conversation, right?
Right.
That we're acknowledging that the problem exists. Wow.
Right.
That's fantastic. Well, you've given us a lot to think about. I really appreciate you sharing your personal story, because that has such tremendous impact, more so than somebody else who doesn't have that lived experience. You bring a lot of gravitas to this conversation, and I'm gonna end our conversation with a questionnaire. I don't know why I like this questionnaire, Don. I just do.
Let her rip. I'm ready to get
good. Okay, good. Don, what is your favorite word?
Help.
What is your least favorite word?
I can't do it. That's a bunch of words, but
okay, good.
Okay.
What are you most passionate about?
Oh, I'd have to say my wife.
Very nice. What bothers you or annoys you or you find to be a complete turnoff?
People just saying no before they even get to take time to think about it. And for me, no to me is not no forever. No is just for now. But sometimes people say no and they say it's forever. That's not a good way to, at least in my mind. No is I need to think about it. I need something. I just don't close your mind to opportunities when they're there. And that's what I feel like some people, when they say no, it's like I'm just closing my mind to everything. Keep your mind wide open.
Yes. What sound or noise do you love?
I'll butcher it, but it's a song. It's a pachelbel. It's the in D major, I think.
Oh, canon in D. Yeah.
Canon in D. There you go.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
That's my favorite. Yeah.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
So anyways.
What sound or noise do you hate?
Fire engines. Sirens.
What profession other than yours would you like to attempt?
Skydiving.
There you go. That's fantastic. If heaven exists, Don, what would you like to hear God say when you arrive at the pearly gates?
Good job, noble servant.
Very nice. Well, Don, I appreciate your time. I thank you for your service to Palomar Family Counseling, and I thank you for sharing your story with us.
Thank you. Have a great day, David.
Thank you. You too. Thank you, everyone, for watching. Bye.